June 30th, 1944. Somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, at 15,000 feet, two Pratt & Whitney radial engines roared in the impenetrable darkness. 4,000 horsepower, the embodiment of American engineering, climbed into the night sky. The crew received coordinates from ground control, target at 12 o'clock, the distance rapidly close to 8 miles. They maneuvered for an intercept. The target was a Japanese one-node Ardor bomber on a night raid, completely unaware it was being pursued. This was the Northrop P-61-3, a twin-engine aircraft with a 66-foot wingspan, a crew of 3, and something no other fighter possessed: radar eyes capable of piercing the deepest night. U.S. Army Air Force's High Command had deemed it excessive, not good enough, not fast enough, too heavy, too slow, a waste of resources. But the enemy couldn't see what they couldn't hear. No engine noise, no searchlights, no warning. Just 4 20mm cannons and 4 50 caliber machine guns materializing from the shadows at close range. By the end of the war, these mile and eye-biting aircraft had destroyed 127 enemy aircraft, their targets never knowing death was approaching. The question isn't why such a heavy night fighter was built. It's how something everyone considered useless became a phantom ruling the darkness. We'll uncover how the High Command's skepticism nearly deprived the world of one of its most effective night hunters, and why its very Sofen became the key to its success. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and subscription. And of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The night of June 30th, 1944, marked more than just another combat mission over the Pacific. It represented the culmination of debates that had raged at the highest levels of the Army Air Forces for nearly 3 years. As Lieutenant Herman Ernst settled into the pilot's seat of his P-61 Black Widow, call sign Moon Happy, the weight of institutional skepticism pressed on his shoulders as heavily as Guadalcanal's tropical humidity. Ernst's radar operator, Lieutenant Edward Kopsel, hunched over the green glow of the SCR-720 radar system screen. Its cathode ray tube displayed electronic ghosts representing real aircraft moving miles away in the darkness. Behind them, Staff Sergeant Raymond Mooney manned the upper turret, his 50 caliber Browning machine guns ready to supplement the 4 20mm Hispano cannons mounted in the aircraft's fuselage. Together, this 3-man crew embodied everything critics deemed wrong with American night fighter doctrine. Too heavy, General Hoyt Vandenberg had declared at a heated Pentagon briefing just weeks prior. Not fast enough. We're putting crews in flying coffins when we could be giving them mosquitoes. The British de Havilland Mosquito, wooden, fast, and proven in European night combat, represented everything the P-61 was not. Where the Mosquito weighed 11,000 pounds empty, the Black Widow tipped the scales at 23,000 pounds fully loaded. While the Mosquito could achieve 400 miles per hour in level flight, the P-61 struggled to maintain 365 miles per hour at optimal altitude. But Jack Northrop built his aircraft based on an entirely different philosophy. The twin-boom design was not an aesthetic choice, but a functional necessity. The central nacelle accommodated the crew and weapon systems. With the two Pratt & Whitney R-800 engines spaced far enough apart to minimize asymmetric thrust issues in case of an engine failure. The radar antenna occupied the entire nose cone without interfering with the propellers. Most importantly, the aircraft's size provided a fuel capacity the Mosquito simply couldn't match. 646 gallons against the British fighters' 460 gallons. Ground intercept control hailed Ernst through his headset. Quote 70. The Japanese had been conducting such harassing night missions for months, with solitary bombers slipping through the darkness to drop ordnance on American facilities. Previous interception attempts using radar-equipped P-38s and F-6F Hellcats had consistently failed. Enemy pilots knew how to use terrain masking and rapid altitude changes to break radar contact. Kopsil's voice crackled over the intercom. Contact, azimuth Z085, range 12 miles, altitude 18,000 feet, course south-southeast. He's going through a gap between two storm cells. The radar operator's fingers danced across the controls, adjusting gain and scan patterns to hold the target. It was an art that separated successful night fighter crews from statistics. The man reading electronics quote 20 and mentally reconstructing the three-dimensional geometry of an intercept in complete darkness. Ernst pushed the throttles forward, feeling the two radial engines respond with increased power. The superchargers whined, forcing compressed air into the cylinders, each engine delivering over 2,000 horsepower. The aircraft steadily gained altitude through the thin tropical air, its fuel gauges dropping with calibrated precision. Range and endurance. That's what mattered in Pacific night combat, not instantaneous speed that impressed airshow crowds. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and subscription. And of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Target maintaining course and speed, Kopsil reported, his voice calm but with an underlying tension. Looks like he's heading for a bombing run. We need to intercept him before he reaches the target area, or Henderson Field is in for a nasty surprise. The Japanese pilot, flying by Dead Reckoning and Celestial Navigation, had no idea that American radar technology had been tracking him since he crossed the 100-mile threshold. The strategic advantage belonged entirely to the hunters, and that advantage was about to be fully exploited. At 18,000 feet, Ernst began his intercept approach, reducing throttle to avoid overshooting the target. The P-61's radar cross-section was minimal for its size. Another Northrop design decision that paid off in combat. The twin-boom configuration diffused radar reflections, making the aircraft appear smaller to enemy detection equipment. Not that the Japanese bomber carried intercept radar. Their night navigation relied on optical landmarks and radio beacons that American intelligence had long since compromised. It was this enemy blindness that became a crucial element in the next phase of this deadly game of hide-and-seek about to unfold in the dark sky. Silent resistance, intelligence failure, and the Black Widow's baptism by fire. Imagine a night with an unseen threat looming above you, and only one aircraft standing between you and imminent disaster, when intelligence has long been compromised and every sound in the darkness could be a harbinger of death. Who will save thousands of sleeping Marines from bombs they'll never see? How did a machine deemed, quote, "1923" change the course of history, and why did its flaws become its greatest assets? Today, we'll uncover the secrets of night fighters whose history is full of dramatic twists and unexpected discoveries. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and subscription. And of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Above the boundless expanse of the night sky, where every rustle seemed a threat, A drama unfolded that would determine the fate of many. Range closing to 8 miles. Copsel's voice cut through the tense silence of the cockpit. Quote 32. This was the critical moment of the night intercept, the final chord separating triumph from a missed opportunity. Ernst, the pilot, whose hands gripped the controls firmly, had thoroughly studied tactical reports from European night fighter squadrons, absorbing the experience of German crews who used darkness and surprise with devastating effectiveness against RAF Bomber Command. The principles were universal: approach from below or behind, maintain radar contact until visual acquisition at close range, then open fire. And then, the Japanese A 34th bomber appeared in Ernst's gunsight just 600 yards away. Its two engines, like dark specters, stood out clearly against the star-filled sky. The Betty pilot maintained straight and level flight, utterly oblivious that death was approaching from the 7 o'clock position. Ernst's fingers settled on the trigger. 4 cannons and 4 machine guns were ready to unleash over 3,000 rounds per minute, a concentrated torrent of firepower. This was the moment of truth, justifying Northrop's design philosophy and Ernst's meticulous crew training. The P-61 was not built for daylight dogfights or high-altitude interception of enemy fighters. It was born for this scenario: detecting unseen enemies in endless darkness and destroying them before they could complete their missions. The institutional critics who doubted its necessity had never flown combat missions where success meant saving thousands of sleeping Marines from bombs they would never see. The Betty's wings erupted in flames as Ernst's burst struck its fuel tanks and engine components. The Japanese aircraft rolled over and began its final dive towards the Pacific, carrying its crew and ordnance that would never reach Henderson Field. For Lieutenant Ernst, this victory meant more than just another kill mark on the fuselage. It proved that the SAR '38, 39 Tabiedak could fulfill its purpose when the stakes were highest. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and subscription. And of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. By early July 1944, the first operational P-61 squadrons were deployed to opposite ends of the globe, each facing radically different tactical challenges. In the Pacific, the 6th Night Fighter Squadron operated from Henderson Field on Guadalcanal, their black aircraft concealed under camouflage netting during daylight hours. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the 422nd Night Fighter Squadron began operations from Scorton Airfield in Yorkshire, preparing for night battles that would define the air war over occupied Europe. The contrast between the theaters became immediately apparent in the first weeks of operational deployment. Pacific missions required long-range patrols over vast ocean expanses, hunting solitary Japanese bombers approaching American facilities under cover of darkness. European operations demanded entirely different tactics: intercepting formations of German transport aircraft, evacuating personnel from advancing Allied ground forces, or pursuing the elusive V-1 flying bombs that terrorized London throughout the summer. Lieutenant Ernst's success over Guadalcanal garnered significant attention within night fighter circles, but it also highlighted a fundamental contradiction between the aircraft's capabilities and institutional expectations. The P-61's 400-mile combat radius provided Pacific crews with the endurance needed for extended patrols. Still, Its top speed of 365 miles per hour at 20,000 feet remained a constant source of criticism among senior Air Force leadership. This speed limitation became critically evident on the night of July 15th, when Lieutenant Robert Anderson of the 482nd Night Fighter Squadron attempted to intercept a V-1 flying bomb over the English Channel. Anderson's radar operator, Technical Sergeant William Hayes, achieved ideal intercept geometry, positioning their Chakris, quote, 4-foot Roi directly behind the German missile as it streaked toward London at 350 miles per hour. The P-61 could match that speed, but barely, and only at the cost of structural integrity. As Anderson pushed his aircraft to its maximum in a shallow dive, the nose cone began to deform under aerodynamic pressure. The plexiglass radar fairing, designed for typical combat speeds rather than extreme intercept scenarios, flexed and cracked as airflow created unexpected pressure differentials. Within seconds, the entire nose section exploded, destroying the SCR-720 radar system and creating a massive hole in the front of the aircraft's fuselage. Hayes managed to maintain intercept data long enough for Anderson to unleash a burst from the belly-mounted cannons. But the V-1 continued its programmed flight toward London. The damaged Black Widow limped back to base, its radar system completely destroyed, and its crew sobered by the realization that their aircraft had fundamental limitations in high-speed intercept scenarios. This incident fueled critics who argued that the P-61 represented flawed design priorities. Nevertheless, these same limitations proved irrelevant during typical night fighter missions, where success depended more on persistence and precision than on sheer speed. Throughout August and September, Pacific-based Black Widows began accumulating a steady tally of downed Japanese night raiders. The 6th Night Fighter Squadron's operations log recorded 17 confirmed kills during this period, with crews consistently demonstrating the aircraft's ability to detect, track, and destroy enemy bombers operating under optimal evasion conditions. Imagine the pinnacle of wartime engineering, an aircraft capable of dominating the night sky, yet whose striking effectiveness ultimately doomed it to obsolescence. This isn't just a story of a combat machine. It's a profound narrative about the paradox of victory, where achieved success paved the way for irrelevance. How could a night fighter with undeniable tactical advantages suddenly find itself without adversaries? What tricks did its pilots employ to become invisible hunters, and why did these methods, once so crucial, cease to matter? The viewer will inevitably ask, how is this possible? Can the peak of mastery truly lead to oblivion? The story of the P-61 Black Widow is a powerful reminder of how even the most sophisticated tools, designed to solve a specific problem, can encounter a world where that problem no longer exists. Having seemingly reached the peak of its combat effectiveness, the aircraft faced an incredible paradox. It excelled at its task, but it was precisely this excellence that eliminated the very need for its existence. In this detailed analysis, we will uncover the full saga of the P-61 Black Widow, from its initial crushing triumphs to its quiet retirement, and here is the first, truly intriguing turn in its fate. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and subscription, and of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Initially, the tactical doctrine born from the Black Widow's early combat successes emphasized not attempting to conceal its perceived flaws, but rather maximizing its unique capabilities. Crews mastered artful methods of approaching enemy targets from below and behind, relying on onboard radar to maintain contact while remaining completely invisible to the adversary. The aircraft's specific twin-boom design minimized its radar cross-section from a direct view, allowing a Nazim-used to a .551IZ to close the distance to firing range before enemy pilots had time to realize a deadly threat was approaching. The European theater of operations, however, dictated different tactical approaches. Crews of the 492nd Night Fighter Squadron quickly adapted their methods to effectively counter German transport aircraft and reconnaissance flights. The congested airspace of Western Europe required exceptional coordination with ground intercept stations, as numerous friendly and enemy aircraft operated simultaneously within relatively confined areas. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and subscription, and of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Cobalt 15. Pilots found themselves in intercept scenarios demanding not only precise navigation, but also lightning-fast reactions. Captain Lee Kendall transferred to the Pacific Theater to serve with the 548th Night Fighter Squadron. Skillfully applied European combat experience to Japanese tactics. His aircraft, nicknamed As de Quote 60 by ground personnel, became the embodiment of lessons learned during months of night battles over the expanses of France and Belgium. Kendall quickly realized that successful intercepts required patience above all other virtues. It was necessary to wait for the ideal attack angle rather than rushing into combat from suboptimal firing positions. This philosophy proved critically important during operations in late September near Iwo Jima, where Japanese night bombers began employing sophisticated evasion techniques gleaned from intelligence reports from the European front. Enemy pilots executed sharp changes in altitude and course, specifically designed to break radar contact, forcing American interceptors to reacquire targets multiple times during a single intercept attempt. The P-61's radar range of 16 miles provided sufficient margin for reacquisition, but this was only possible if crews rigorously maintained discipline in their approach methods. The aircraft's heavy armament configuration became its decisive advantage in these complex intercept scenarios. Unlike single-engine fighters adapted for night operations, the Quote 63 carried enough firepower to destroy targets with short but lethal bursts. 4 20mm Hispano cannons could penetrate bomber armor at ranges exceeding 1,000 yards, while 4 50 caliber Browning machine guns provided a volume of fire that guaranteed target destruction even with a relatively low probability of a direct hit. Statistical analysis of combat results conducted through October 1944 revealed clear patterns that fully confirmed Northrop's original design concept. Black Widow crews demonstrated significantly higher kill ratios than pilots of modified day fighters operating as night interceptors. This was primarily due to the P-61's integrated radar and weapon systems, which allowed for precise and aimed attacks rather than relying on the Quote 66 tactics. The aircraft's size and complexity, once perceived as drawbacks, proved absolutely essential for successful mission execution in operational conditions. However, those impressive tactical successes could not overcome the harsh strategic reality. By November, German air activity over Western Europe had sharply declined, as severe fuel shortages and catastrophic pilot losses reduced Luftwaffe night operations to an absolute minimum. Japanese night bombing campaigns also significantly weakened, as undeniable American air superiority methodically destroyed most enemy bomber bases within reach of strategic targets. The P-61 increasingly found itself without suitable targets, leading to a resurgence of pointed questions about production priorities. The paradox became increasingly clear to crews who had, in practice, proven their aircraft's effectiveness in combat. They possessed arguably the most advanced night fighter in the world, equipped with radar systems and firepower that enemy pilots could neither detect nor effectively counter. Yet, changing strategic circumstances were eliminating the very set of tasks for which the Site-69 had been designed. Ultimately, victory in the night war meant that night fighters would simply become obsolete. Spring 1945 brought an unexpected and rather bleak twilight to the night fighter war. Captain Lee Kendall, now based at Aishima with the 548th Night Fighter Squadron, found himself flying increasingly routine patrols over waters that once teemed with enemy aircraft. Japanese night bombing operations had dwindled to isolated nuisance missions, launched from bases hundreds of miles away by pilots operating with minimal fuel reserves and antiquated equipment. The strategic calculus that once justified the P-61's development was rapidly disintegrating. Nevertheless, institutional inertia continued to drive Black Widow operations, even as their tactical relevance steadily diminished. Northrop's production lines delivered the last of 706 units, each representing hundreds of thousands of dollars in manufacturing costs and thousands of hours of skilled labor. Squadron commanders received orders to maintain combat readiness, despite the obvious reality that enemy air activity no longer warranted such significant expenditures of resources and personnel. This contradiction became painfully evident during April operations, when entire night fighter squadrons logged tens of hours without a single enemy contact. Crews patrolled empty skies, their sophisticated radar equipment detecting nothing more threatening than routine weather formations and occasional friendly aircraft operating outside standard coordination procedures. Imagine the paradox. You hone your skills for months, invest colossal resources in advanced technology, and then, just as the goal seems almost within reach, it's all suddenly declared unnecessary. Does that feeling resonate with you? The feeling when your efforts are undervalued and your most powerful tool seems redundant? This bitter irony is precisely what specialized night fighter crews faced in the war's final months, as their aircraft seemed to lose relevance. But what if this .75 Chag investment not only saved thousands of lives, but also fundamentally altered enemy strategy, forcing them to abandon their most destructive operations? And what if, at the very last moment, a single sortie, fraught with tension and unpredictability, led to the most tragic yet decisive victory, determining the outcome of an entire conflict? We will tell the story of a machine that became the invisible predator of the night sky, of its incredible ability to dominate in darkness, and how its presence forced Japanese command to abandon systematic night bombings, making such missions prohibitively dangerous and costly. But the main question before us today is, how could the final act of this war, an interception meant to confirm its effectiveness, turn into such a cruel irony becoming a symbol not only of triumph but also of unintended tragedy? We will explore how one crew, following protocol, unwittingly altered the course of peace negotiations. Stay with us and watch until the end, as this story is full of unexpected twists. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The psychological pressure on the crews was immense. Pilots and radar operators, who had spent months honing complex interception methods, now faced the prospect that their skills might never again be tested in actual combat. General Vandenberg's earlier skeptical remarks seemed prophetic as the war relentlessly drew to a close. Massive investments in night fighter development began to appear increasingly wasteful when evaluated against the backdrop of significantly reduced enemy activity. However, those same critics either could not or would not acknowledge the colossal strategic impact that P-61 operations had exerted during their operational peak. Japanese commanders were forced to completely abandon systematic night bombing campaigns precisely because American interceptors, equipped with advanced radars, made such missions prohibitively costly in terms of losses. The final dramatic confirmation of the Black Widow's undeniable effectiveness occurred in the early morning hours of August 14, 1945. Kendall's crew, aboard their aircraft poetically named Seg-80 received coordinates from ground control to intercept a lone contact approaching Okinawa from the northwest. Intelligence received on the ground suggested that this aircraft might be carrying Japanese officials attempting to reach Allied headquarters for surrender negotiations. However, despite these suspicions, standard interception procedures remained in effect until a definitive positive identification of the target could be established. Kendall's radar operator established solid contact at an impressive 14-mile range, meticulously tracking the target as it descended through broken cloud layers towards Okinawa's airfields. The aircraft's flight profile indicated a twin-engine transport, most likely a reconnaissance variant of the Mitsubishi Ki-46 Dyna, specially modified for long-range courier missions. Standard military doctrine required mandatory visual identification before initiating any combat action. But the pitch darkness and extremely challenging weather conditions made such identification exceedingly difficult, if not impossible. As Lady in the Dark closed to interception range, Kendall noted that the target aircraft displayed navigation lights and maintained a remarkably steady course directly towards an American-controlled airfield. These factors, at first glance, clearly suggested friendly intentions. However, intelligence warnings about cunning Japanese deception tactics remained in effect and could not be ignored. The decision to engage or attempt further identification of the target rested entirely with the intercepting crew, who held full tactical authority and responsibility during night operations. Stay with us and watch until the end, as this story is full of unexpected twists. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription, and of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. At a distance of just 800 yards, Kendall finally established visual contact with what was clearly a Japanese naval reconnaissance aircraft, flying without any escort and making no evasive maneuvers. The target pilot seemed completely unaware of the P-61's presence, maintaining a straight and level flight, presumably orienting by radio beacon. Kendall's finger moved decisively to the firing controls as he positioned for an ideal attack angle. The burst lasted less than 3 seconds. 4 cannons and 4 machine guns unleashed a torrent of fire into the central fuselage and wing roots of the enemy aircraft. The target immediately disintegrated in midair, its fuel tanks igniting in a brilliant fireball that momentarily illuminated the surrounding cloud formations. Debris scattered over several square miles of ocean surface, leaving no possibility of rescuing survivors or recovering any parts of the aircraft. Post-mission intelligence analysis bitterly confirmed that Kendall's target was carrying Japanese naval personnel attempting to establish contact with Allied forces regarding surrender procedures. The irony of fate proved incredibly bitter and cruel. The war's final aerial victory eliminated potential participants in peace negotiations, merely underscoring the tragic absurdity of the conflict. Nevertheless, Kendall and his crew had perfectly followed all established procedures, demonstrating the lethal effectiveness that had ensured the success of P-61 operations throughout their operational history. Within mere hours of this final, fateful interception, Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's unconditional surrender in radio broadcasts that were intercepted and tracked by American intelligence stations across the Pacific. This historic declaration effectively ended all combat operations, including, of course, the night fighter missions that justified the Yoshio Taigen 89-18-1's existence. 706 aircraft, thousands of trained service members, and millions of dollars spent on development and production suddenly became obsolete with a single radio transmission that heralded the arrival of peace. A statistical report compiled after the war painted a complex but compelling picture of operational success and strategic necessity. American night fighter squadrons flying the P-61 destroyed 127 enemy aircraft during approximately 10 months of intense combat operations. They also intercepted and destroyed 18 V-1 cruise missiles and 1 lost B-29 flying on autopilot over Iwo Jima. Additional victories likely remained unconfirmed due to combat taking place over vast oceanic areas where wreckage recovery was simply impossible. These figures represented far more than a simple tally of downed aircraft. They reflected the successful implementation of a revolutionary tactical doctrine. The P-61 irrefutably proved that specialized night fighters could absolutely dominate in darkness thanks to superior technology and unparalleled crew training. Enemy pilots, who had previously operated with impunity at night, now found themselves hunted by invisible predators equipped with radar, .92, and devastating firepower. The legacy of this unique aircraft extended far beyond immediate combat results, encompassing much broader strategic implications. The Japanese abandonment of systematic night bombing campaigns freed thousands of American service members from air defense duties, allowing them to be rapidly redeployed to offensive operations, thereby accelerating victory. The British adoption of American night fighter doctrine significantly influenced post-war interceptor development programs, which would prove crucial during the tense confrontations of the Cold War. Perhaps most significantly, the P-61 clearly demonstrated that specialized aircraft, designed for specific tasks, could achieve astonishing tactical success despite apparent shortcomings in conventional performance metrics. Speed and maneuverability were far less important than radar capabilities and firepower, when engagements occurred in complete darkness against entirely unsuspecting targets. The lessons learned from DART 95 operations would influence jet interceptor design for decades. When Kendall landed 96 for the last time as a combat aircraft, he understood that his G-97 plane had fully fulfilled its purpose. Critics who doubted the true value of the P-61 simply failed to grasp the fundamental nature of night warfare, where victory belonged to those who could see without being seen and strike without warning. Sometimes, what at first glance seems unnecessary and redundant is in fact precisely what is absolutely essential when you wage war at night. Quiet. Do you hear that? That sound isn't just noise. It's the echo of a war fought under the cover of night, where every flight could have been the last. In this video, we will delve into the history of one of World War II's most underestimated heroes, the P-61 Black Widow night fighter. How did this aircraft, seemingly slow and complex, manage to turn the tide of night battles? Why did its true value remain unnoticed by decision-makers? And how, one day in September 1945, did its reputation hang in the balance when young pilots and engineers had to defend it before a skeptical commission? Stay with us and watch until the end, as we'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching this video from. The peacetime that followed the cessation of hostilities paradoxically brought no clarity regarding the true significance of the P-61 for American military doctrine. Lieutenant Herman Ernst, one of those who had known the Black Widow in combat, found himself at the epicenter of this uncertainty. Appearing before a War Department evaluation committee in September 1945. His task was not easy. To defend the reputation of an aircraft whose wartime procurement was now under intense scrutiny. The committee, comprised predominantly of senior officers who had never faced the realities of night aerial combat, approached the Black Widow program from a purely economic perspective, questioning its strategic necessity and cost-effectiveness. Ernst's testimony shed light on operational nuances that statistical reports simply couldn't capture. The 127 confirmed kills were only those victories where irrefutable evidence existed, wreckage or eyewitness accounts. But dozens of other interceptions occurred over the vast expanses of the ocean, where enemy aircraft simply vanished from radar screens after encounters with P-61 crews, leaving the true attrition rate unknown. Veterans who had experienced the crucible of war well understood that many successful interceptions left no tangible trace. Furthermore, the psychological effect on the enemy could not be measured by conventional metrics. Japanese night bombings virtually ceased not only due to fuel shortages or personnel losses, but also because American interceptors, equipped with radar, transformed such missions into an extremely perilous undertaking. Enemy commanders, who once regularly launched raids on Allied targets, could no longer guarantee the survival of their aircraft even beyond the first interception zone. The questions posed by the evaluation committee clearly demonstrated their fundamental misunderstanding of night fighter doctrine and its operational requirements. Committee members persistently focused on the P-61's relatively low speed compared to day fighters, completely ignoring the fact that maximum speed lost its relevance in night interception scenarios. They criticized the aircraft's complex design and high maintenance requirements, failing to acknowledge that successful night operations were inconceivable without sophisticated radar systems and specialized crew training, which simpler machines simply could not provide. Stay with us and watch until the end, as we'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And, of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching this video from. Finally, Jack Northrop himself appeared before the committee to defend his engineering philosophy and the technical decisions made. The aircraft's creator faced a potential congressional investigation into development costs and production timelines, making his testimony critically important for both the corporation's reputation and future military contracts. Northrop firmly stated that the P-61 fully met all specification requirements established by the Army Air Forces during initial procurement negotiations. The twin-boom configuration allowed for optimal radar placement without propeller interference, enabling detection ranges unattainable by single-engine fighters. Heavy armament ensured sufficient firepower to destroy targets with minimal engagement time, reducing vulnerability during attack runs. And perhaps most importantly, the aircraft's fuel capacity and structural integrity allowed for extended patrol missions over vast Pacific distances, which would have been impossible with lighter interceptors. Northrop's technical presentation included a detailed analysis of alternative approaches that the Army Air Forces had considered in the early stages of development. British Mosquito night fighters, despite their superior speed and proven European combat experience, lacked the range required for Pacific operations. Modified P-38 Lightnings, equipped with radar pods, suffered from asymmetric loading issues that created dangerous handling characteristics. Single-engine fighters with external radar installations experienced performance degradation, nullifying their speed advantages. Manufacturer data convincingly demonstrated that no existing aircraft could perform the night fighter mission as effectively as the purpose-built P-61. Critics advocating for alternative procurement solutions simply failed to understand the unique requirements of night interception operations, where success depended on sensor capabilities and firepower, not conventional performance metrics. Edward Copsall, by then a captain, presented detailed testimony concerning the training of radar operators and the tactical procedures that had proven effective in combat. The SCR-720 radar system was a revolutionary technology, requiring months of specialized training before operators could achieve the necessary level of proficiency. This complexity, which critics deemed excessive, in fact reflected sophisticated capabilities that allowed for precise intercepts in conditions where visual identification was impossible. Copsall's operational analysis revealed the intricate coordination required among the pilot, radar operator, and ground intercept control stations during successful missions. The P-61's three-person crew configuration provided redundancy and specialization that single-seat aircraft could never offer. Night fighter operations demanded the simultaneous management of radar tracking, navigation, communication, and weapon systems, tasks that exceeded the capabilities of individual pilots, regardless of their skill level. The captain's testimony included specific mission examples where crew coordination alone determined the line between success and failure. Multiple intercept scenarios required rapid decision-making based on the interpretation of radar data, while maintaining precise aircraft control in pitch darkness. The P-61's stable flight characteristics and comprehensive instrumentation allowed crews to execute complex maneuvers that would have been impossible in less advanced aircraft. Perhaps most compelling was Kopsol's analysis of enemy countermeasures and their ineffectiveness against properly applied, quote, 117 tactics. Japanese pilots attempted various evasion techniques, including rapid altitude changes, course reversals, and electronic countermeasures designed to break radar contact. None of these methods proved consistently successful against P-61 crews who thoroughly understood the capabilities and limitations of their equipment. Have you ever felt that your ideas were ahead of their time, considered too bold, or even unnecessary? Perhaps you've encountered a situation where your groundbreaking efforts were met with skepticism, their true value only becoming apparent years later. The story of the P-61 Black Widow aircraft is precisely one such tale. It's a narrative about a machine initially labeled overly complex and expensive, yet one that ultimately shaped the future of jet fighters for decades to come. How did a machine that critics deemed unfeasible become the cradle for an entire era in aviation? What unseen sacrifices did its crews make, their exploits going unnoticed in cold bureaucratic reports? And why do even the most authoritative evaluation committees sometimes fail to see beyond immediate costs, missing the strategic importance of innovations that change the world? Today, we will uncover the true saga of the P-61 Quothashipolanawaran. Ian, a machine whose legacy is far deeper than its contemporaries realized. We will reveal why the initial assessments of this unique combat unit proved remarkably short-sighted. Stay with us and watch until the end to learn the full truth about the Sukhoi 23H and its enduring impact on military aviation. We would be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The final report of the evaluation committee, despite acknowledging the P-61's technical sophistication and high combat effectiveness, still raised serious questions regarding the justification for such specialized capabilities at such development costs. Committee members concluded that rapid changes in the strategic environment somewhat limited the aircraft's operational utility. But they refrained from directly criticizing procurement decisions made under entirely different wartime conditions. This purely bureaucratic assessment, unfortunately, overlooked the much broader and deeper implications that Black Widow operations had for future air defense planning. It was the P-61 that established doctrinal precedents and tactical procedures which subsequently had a formative influence on the development of jet interceptors throughout the nascent Cold War period. The integration of airborne radar with ground intercept control systems, stringent crew specialization requirements, and, of course, all-weather intercept capabilities all became standard features of the post-war fighter. Moreover, this aircraft vividly demonstrated that American industrial might was capable of creating highly complex weapon systems that not only met but surpassed the enemy's best equipment. The SCR-720 radar represented genuine technological superiority, providing Allied forces with decisive advantages in highly specialized missions. This impressive demonstration of advanced electronics integration proved critical for maintaining air superiority in future conflicts. However, the human cost of night fighter operations remained virtually invisible to evaluation committees, which were focused entirely on statistical analysis and procurement efficiency. Crews who spent hundreds of hours in pitch darkness, tracking invisible enemies over hostile territory, bore immense psychological burdens that official reports never acknowledged. The constant stress of radar intercepts, making weapon deployment decisions, and complex navigation tasks in zero visibility inflicted a toll that would affect veterans for decades. Lieutenant Ernst's post-war correspondence with other Black Widow veterans vividly revealed the long-term impact of their shared experience. Individuals who entrusted their lives to radar screens and instrument panels developed unique perspectives on technology and human capabilities that fundamentally differed from those of conventional fighter pilots. They deeply understood that victory in modern warfare increasingly depended on superior sensors and rapid information processing rather than solely on traditional pilot skills. This unnecessary aircraft indeed fundamentally changed the nature of aerial combat, establishing foundational patterns for electronic warfare and precision intercept operations that would define military aviation throughout the jet era. Its critics were correct about its speed limitations and complexity drawbacks, but they were fatally mistaken about its strategic value and operational necessity. Sometimes, the most crucial victories are won in the dark, where only specialized tools can ensure success. Decades after the war's end would fully vindicate the P-61's design philosophy in ways its initial critics could never have foreseen. By 1950, the emergence of Soviet long-range bombers capable of delivering nuclear weapons overnight transformed the requirements of American air defense. The Continental Air Defense Command desperately sought intercept capabilities that could operate in all weather, day or night, against targets capable of approaching at any altitude or speed. The lessons learned from Black Widow operations became foundational doctrine for a new generation of jet interceptors entering service throughout the 1950s. The Northrop F-89, Scorpion, Lockheed F-94 Starfire, and other Cold War fighters embodied the design principles developed in the P-61 program. Twin-engine configurations provided crucial redundancy during long patrols over water, while sophisticated radar systems enabled all-weather intercepts that single-engine day fighters could never match. Hermann Ernst, now a retired Air Force colonel, actively participated in the testing of these new interceptors, applying his invaluable combat experience to shaping tactical doctrine and crew training requirements. His insights proved absolutely indispensable during the transition from propeller-driven to jet night fighters, especially regarding the complex integration of ground intercept control systems with airborne radar equipment. Ernst's analysis consistently emphasized that technological advancement alone could not guarantee operational success. The P-61's effectiveness depended equally on meticulous crew training and rigorous tactical discipline as it did on advanced equipment. Pilots and radar operators required hundreds of flight hours to develop peak proficiency in night intercept procedures. These significant investments in training could not be reduced by simplified aircraft systems or automated equipment. The colonel's recommendations profoundly influenced Air Defense Command's training programs throughout the 1950s, leading to the establishment of specialized night fighter crew, schools, and the standardization of intercept procedures developed from real-world Wodindapun combat experience. These doctrinal foundations proved critical when Soviet bomber formations began testing American air defense responses amidst the heightened tensions of the Cold War. Edward Kopsel, now working as a technical consultant for radar manufacturer Westinghouse, applied his deep operational knowledge to developing improved intercept systems for next-generation fighters. The SCR-720 radar, which equipped the P-61, represented primitive technology compared to post-war developments, but the tactical procedures Kopsel refined remained fundamentally unchanged. Kopsel's work emphasized the critical importance of human-machine interface design in complex weapon systems. The most advanced radar equipment was meaningless if operators could not quickly and accurately interpret information under the high-stress conditions of combat scenarios. His experience with the P-61's crew coordination requirements significantly influenced the development of two-seat fighters, which became the standard for interceptors throughout the jet era. The former radar operator's technical presentations to military audiences consistently highlighted the psychological factors determining success or failure during night intercept missions. Crews operating in complete darkness, relying entirely on electronic sensors and instrument displays, faced unique stresses that demanded specialized training and specific equipment design. These insights proved invaluable as air defense planners confronted the challenges of intercept requirements in the nuclear age. Jack Northrop's aircraft company actively leveraged its valuable experience gained from the Black Widow's creation to successfully compete for major Cold War defense contracts, including the development of flying wing bombers and advanced interceptor designs. The engineering expertise accumulated during the P-61's development provided decisive advantages in radar integration, electronic system layout, and crew station design that competitors could not match. Northrop's post-war success with the F-89 Scorpion Knight fighter clearly demonstrated the enduring relevance of the design principles established in the Black Widow program. The twin-boom configuration, powerful armament, and sophisticated radar systems, once considered unnecessary excesses by critics, became standard features of American interceptors throughout the 1950s and 1960s. The manufacturer's corporate archives carefully preserved detailed technical documentation on the P-61 program, including test data, operational reports, and invaluable crew feedback, which proved immensely useful for subsequent aircraft development. This accumulated institutional knowledge enabled Northrop to avoid repeating design errors while incorporating lessons learned from real combat operations. Have you often encountered ideas that initially seemed absurd or superfluous, but ultimately proved groundbreaking? Has it ever happened that your unique experience, which no one valued, suddenly became the key to solving the most complex problems? Today, we will tell a story that will make you rethink the value of what seems, quote, wunderforcing. We will delve into the world of the P-61 as, quote, wonder, an aircraft many contemporaries considered unnecessary, but which, as it turned out, not only achieved the last aerial victory of World War II, but also became the unspoken architect of future air defense. How did the experience of one pilot, Lee Kendall, manage to change the requirements for entire generations of fighters? And how did this heavy night interceptor, far from the ideals of maneuverability, become a model for Cold War strategic planning, influencing the entire jet era? Prepare to learn how its, quote, enormous fuel capacity and a spacious fuselage turned out to be decisive advantages. In this narrative, we will reveal why the P-61, despite all the skeptics, laid the doctrinal foundations, technological precedents, and operational procedures that would define aerial operations for decades. And we will begin with how unparalleled combat experience shaped a future that had not yet arrived. Lee Kendall, the pilot credited with the last aerial victory of World War II, returned to civilian life after the conflict, but his connection to the development of air defense remained unbroken. His invaluable experience, gained during multi-hour patrol missions over the vast expanses of the Pacific Ocean aboard the P-61, profoundly influenced the shaping of requirements for a new generation of interceptors. These aircraft were intended to defend North American airspace from a potential invasion by Soviet bombers. Kendall's operational conclusions clearly indicated the enduring importance of aircraft endurance and crew comfort, factors critical for successful air defense missions. Recall how the P-61 Black Widow, with its impressive fuel capacity and spacious cockpits, allowed for patrols lasting 6 hours or more, capabilities that proved absolutely essential for maintaining effective interception over vast geographical areas. As part of his technical consulting work, the former captain actively participated in evaluating proposed interceptor designs, analyzing their suitability for defense missions. His combat experience provided a unique perspective unavailable to purely engineering analysis, especially regarding the practical limitations of crew performance during prolonged, high-stress operations. Stay with us and watch until the end, because it's only going to get more interesting. We would be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. By 1960, with the world fully immersed in the Cold War, strategic analysts began to re-evaluate the historical significance of the P-61, extending far beyond its direct military contributions. This aircraft established unprecedented standards for specialized weapon systems, designed not for universal optimization of conventional performance parameters, but for specific tactical requirements. This design philosophy proved crucial for creating effective responses to constantly evolving threats throughout the Cold War. The Black Widow's integration of advanced sensors, potent armament, and crew specialization enabled operational capabilities that significantly surpassed the sum of its individual components. This systemic approach to aircraft design became standard practice for military aviation throughout the jet era, influencing everything from air superiority fighters to strategic reconnaissance aircraft. Perhaps the P-61's most significant achievement was demonstrating that technological superiority could provide decisive advantages in highly specialized missions, even when conventional wisdom suggested entirely different approaches. The aircraft's critics may have been correct about its limitations in daytime combat scenarios, but they were profoundly mistaken about the strategic importance of its unique night intercept capabilities. Veterans who flew combat missions in Black Widows carried unique perspectives on the interplay between technology and tactical success. Their experience conclusively demonstrated that complex equipment demands equally complex training and operational procedures to achieve maximum effectiveness. These lessons proved invaluable as military aviation entered the missile age, where human judgment remained critical despite rapidly increasing automation. That very unnecessary fighter indeed evolved into something far more significant than its initial critics could have imagined. And once again, we remind you, stay with us and watch until the end so you don't miss the key takeaways. A like and a subscription are the best thanks, and your comment indicating the city you're watching from is always very valuable to us. Thus, doctrinal foundations, technological precedents, and operational procedures were not merely created but firmly established, destined to define air defense operations for generations. The night, with its invisible threats, definitively belonged to those equipped with superior sensors and devastating firepower, a principle the P-61 Black Widow convincingly proved during its brief but incredibly decisive operational career.